the hiring managers that I submit candidates to for the positions that we get, they don't want to read a book. I mean, they just don't. They don't want to have to weed through information to find the skills they're looking for. So time is of the essence. You know, everyone's in a hurry nowadays. So as basic as you can make it without taking away from, you know, you definitely want all your skill set on there.
The resume is really just something to grab my interest. And I want one of my recruiters to say, hey, Jackie, look at this one. And the reason I would look at it is because I see some bullet points or some titles that draw my interest, and they're relative to the position that you're applying to. I don't want to have to read a whole paragraph on the experience that you have as that person or as that title, because I want to give you the opportunity to articulate that to me when you come in and see me.
What if you maybe worked for 5 different places and you're like, well, these ones I worked at so long ago, but they're relevant to the field, they should be included?
Absolutely. You know, when you're talking about putting it to one page, yes, I can't sift through a 6-page resume. And the flip side to that is when I'm looking at this, I'm like, wow, this person can't hold down a job to save their life. Like I almost want to know why they've worked at all these places. They're 22, and then we find out, that maybe they've moved a lot or stuff like that, which is fine. Everybody has different life experience. But, if you were to try to get it down to that page to make it simple, really tailor it to the specific information based on the industry you're trying to get into, for sure.
And those are things that you can also address on your cover letter. We do have like minimum qualifications that we're looking for. So when you're looking at the job description, do look and see what are the basics that we're looking for, and then the desirable. The basics should be covered. It should be easy for us to just look at your resume or your application and it's there. And then the desirable, you want to make sure to include that if you have it. Cover letter is great for that as well. Whatever you don't think that's going to stand out from your resume or application, bring it out on your cover letter so that we can see it right away and keep it clear. Like you said, very clean, simple to review the resume, makes it a lot easier for us to say, okay, she's got the min qualifications, we're good. And then the desirable goes to the next stage. So you want to make sure you have all of that.
I do want to mention there's 2 very important parts of the job description. There is the education. That is the minimum. That's mandatory. That is what you have to come in for a preliminary interview. And then there's an area called preferred qualifications. That is the only area that the hiring supervisor can be more specific, detailed, to bring up the bar, to separate those from the rest of the applicants. So looking at those areas when you go to apply is what I would be focusing on, and seeing, do I meet the minimum, the education, and do I meet some of the preferred or all of the preferred? It completely is different for each hiring supervisor. It's, it could be, for an example, it could be 3 years of customer service, or a preferred a bachelor's plus 3 years of customer service. So it's whatever they're looking for beyond the education.
If it's a resume, obviously you're looking for a stable work history if at all possible. That doesn't always apply though, because you may be interviewing someone or looking at someone who's a recent college graduate. So the overall format, no spelling mistakes is always nice. Something simple, something short, and nicely put together, while kind of balancing being relatively self-promoting but honest at the same time. But a stable work history is number 1.
One of my personal pet peeves is when the objective is like 3 paragraphs long. Just keep it to like 1 sentence. It just state what you're after. Like for me, my objective was a leadership position in human resources. End of subject. What I don't like is when people put a mutually beneficial relationship where that just is kind of like, okay, I've read that 1,000 times in my career. So
Can I ask you a question about that? How do you feel about objectives that say to secure a position in accounting at Decker's Corporation?
Perfect.
Try to find out what the job description is. Most job postings will have some type of job description of showing like what you're going to be doing, and then the requirements, the skills that you need to do those things. I wouldn't say cut and paste that onto the resume, but definitely try and take some of those components, things that you're going to be doing at the job, and put them on your resume to show that you've done that before. right? Where you may have thought, oh, that's not important to put on there, or that doesn't sound that good. Well, if the company is looking for you to do these 10 things and you've got like 8 of them on your resume that you've already done, that's going to look good.
You know, I deal with resumes and review resumes all day. And so over the years of doing that, the best thing I could suggest to you is to make a skills and accomplishment based resume. For someone who's in college or getting ready to graduate, there's really no reason that you need a resume longer than a page. You know, your contact information on the top, a skills category. I would say immediately under your skills category should go your education. Skills and education is basically the first 2 things that a lot of the employers that I work with are interested in. And then you can list your experience, but you know, like I said before, more your accomplishments while you worked at those places, if you have job history, not necessarily a job description.
And you also want, like, say you're going for the, you know, hotel business, well then you want to list the jobs that pertain to that, you know, if you have had several different ones, or, you know what I mean, you might have a certain job description, but then it's more financial, not customer service, so you kind of tweak it. And you constantly tweak your resume. You always want to tweak your resume to go towards whatever position you're applying for.
I would also recommend that you maybe have more than one resume tailored to the specific industry you're going into. Because you could put that you've been in fast food multiple times, but I'm really trying to zero in on that one time you were with the retailer. The customer service aspect is definitely there. I can get that from the snapshot of your resume. But if you were to have a second resume for a different industry, say you're applying to food and beverage, which we all know in Santa Barbara is huge, right? It's a restaurant, food and beverage industry. It would be different for hospitality. It would be different for retail. So your bullet points should reflect the things that you did really well as an accomplishment in that particular industry to help us better understand why. Because I'll sit down with somebody and I'm like, okay, tell me about your history. You know, oh, I wanted to fit it all on one page, but I didn't tell you that I also worked for Kohl's and Kmart. Okay, well, let's talk about that. I appreciate everything you've done for food and beverage, but let's talk about what you did in retail. So maybe kind of having an extra option, so to say, that you would have ready to present if you were looking at multiple industries to try to find your niche.
I would also suggest that you have somebody else read your resume, because you've written it and you've rewritten it and you've rewritten it and you've seen it so many times that you're not going to see what mistakes are left on there. So if you just have somebody, just some objective person that, I mean, you don't have to be an English scholar. They're just somebody that can reread your resume so that they would know.
I just wanted to say one more thing too, really quickly. You know, people put their resumes and they apply, and we call them. And so I would really pay attention to your voicemail messages that you guys have on your phones, because that can cost you the ability to get a job as well. I mean, if you have rap music in the background or whatever music blaring, and you're hard to understand, and it just really, I would keep it very, very simple. You know, and as professional as possible if you are seeking employment. And that might be fine for your friends, but not for a potential employer. I would say on a resume like that, somebody who has no job experience or maybe only one job, yeah, you can put those things: dependable, responsible. It fills up space. And also, cover letter would be very important with that, to explain your situation. I mean, it should be very black and white for someone reading it, you know, looking at the age and the education. Skills category, I would suggest being a little bit longer than a normal resume, just to fill space as well. But yeah, the cover letter is what's going to stand out, you know, ambitious, you know, person looking for work and just looking for that experience and somebody to take a chance on them, you know, educated and responsible. So I deal with that a lot. It's very frustrating. People want people with work experience, but you can't get it unless somebody takes a chance on you. So it really is a frustrating situation for a lot of students. Yeah.
I would add to that something that many people forget: internships, volunteer work.
Yes.
Put those on your resume as well. We count that. Like if you've done an internship for months at a particular place that is relevant to the position that you're applying for, we count that. So use your every opportunity to do some internships and get some hands-on experience.
You know, we hire people every day that it's their first job. And one of the things that I've taught, I think, a lot of the local retailers here is that they don't need a lot of that experience because you're moldable. You're not set in your ways. You don't have to unlearn things, and I get to create a mini little retail monster. So, you know, I really like that opportunity. So, you know, little things just to show that you are dependable and stuff like that. Walking the dog, the neighbor's dog, if you cleaned horse stalls for your neighbor or something like that, if you were a babysitter at some point. I don't find any of those things silly or irrelevant, because it shows that you had responsibility, you were taught responsibility. Those things are important so that you're willing to continue to develop and build off of those things that you got. And those volunteer opportunities are huge, you know, because it just puts you face to face with the public.
When we see someone who's done volunteer work as part of when they were a student or with other jobs, we value that very highly.
Yes, work experience is huge, but also it's really personality. I mean, you have to have the right personality too, because you could have all the skills that you need to be in this one department, but if you're not going to mesh with the people, or, you know, it's just, you really have to know how to relate with people. Diversity is huge, especially in this world.
A resume is received and there's evidence the person has been terminated. How heavily will that weigh on a decision to interview? It's probably not going to be evident on a resume. It will be evident on a job application. And I think most employers want to hear more. They want to know why it happened, and they're probably willing to talk with you if you have applicable skills. You know, there's all kinds of different circumstances. There's terminations for performance, and there's termination for poor work habits, but there are also layoffs. And there are just many, many circumstances. I know in my case, working for an employment service, we have to be very careful about the type of employee that we represent to our client companies, but we also understand that times are tough and people are human and there are different circumstances. So we would probably talk with you on the phone and find out a little bit more about it and gauge your overall attitude and your skills as well, and then decide if we were going to bring you in for an interview.
It's a case-by-case basis, because if you say that you're terminated on application, but I see it was a job that you were there for 3 months, the next, you know, job in your history, you were there for 6 years, you know, and I know that this wasn't the right fit. So, you know, it depends on the circumstances, and I think it's reviewed case by case. For us, I know that I've told my recruiters, make sure you take a look at the whole picture. Don't judge on one piece. We have to see how this puzzle fits together, because you know, every person's complicated. We just need to see where it is in relation to your job history. Was it your most recent job? Have you bounced around 3 or 4 jobs over the last 12-month period? So there's a lot more that kind of goes into that thought process for us.
Actually, at City College, we have a very strong population of people who have returned to school. They've paid their time, they've done their debt to society, and is all taken care of. And how do they address that on a resume?
I'm not sure you would. I mean, I would put that on there and reserve that for the face-to-face interview, because that could be just a deal breaker in the very beginning. And you want to put stuff on your resume. People want you. There's a reason they want to talk to you. You have a skill that they need and they need to talk to you about. So putting things on there like, you know, the date you were born and just things that, you know, don't need to be on there until you go to a face-to-face interview, because that's your goal. Like you said, you send out a lot of resumes, you don't get responses. Your goal is to get a response and get in there and show them who you are and what you offer. So putting things on there that could be looked at differently, I wouldn't do that.
I mean, I can only speak for most retailers across the board, but when we do background checks for specific roles and stuff like that, the misdemeanors aren't going to show up. You know, it's a pretty broad, like, we just really want to find out if there's any really intense information that we should know about or that you should have, you know, disclosed. And, you know, for students in particular, when I think about students that are applying out in IV and stuff like that, I mean, there are moments where alcohol's been a factor. You know, stuff like that, where you may have, you know, been cited or been arrested or something along those lines, and none of that really will come back to bite you unless there was something even more intense.
I have a question for you, Scott, because I'm imagining, do you guys have an application that you either have online or that you give to people, or are you strictly...
Yeah,
you do.
We do have an application. I like to get the resumes too, because then it allows me to kind of get a snapshot, a little bit more information about them. But we do have an application they can come in and pick up. And a lot of retailers have switched to their stuff online. My specific retailer is a a little behind the times technology-wise, so we still do the old school. But I appreciate it because when I'm getting visual merchandising applicants and all these things from Monster Jobs and all the major job search engines that we work with as a company, I don't get to see them. I don't get to know them. They're moving here from Colorado, random stuff, but I do get to look at their resume attached and their experience. So I do like the one-on-one, when we get to see them come in and ask for the application, especially in our level of retail because it's higher in fashion. So we want to see that, if you look the part, then it's going to carry a little more weight because they might not have experience, but, hey, you can put an outfit together. That's what we're looking for. I need customers that want to come up to you because you're going to be the person that gives them that fashion advice on what to wear out for their night or to that wedding, stuff like that.
The cover letter is where I get to see if you're able to write and how clearly you can present yourself. And also, it's an opportunity for you to say, a cover letter tells me that someone has applied for the role that I'm advertising and not just applied for a job because they need a job. And the cover letter is what says, I read your job description and I've done this thing and this thing and this thing that exactly is what you're looking for. And I think when you have a chance to meet me and talk about my other skills, you'll see that, blah, blah, whatever you say. But it's where I can tell if someone has actually taken the time to apply for this role.
Things that would be important to me is I kind of will gather a sense of whether or not you've researched the company that you're applying to when I look at that cover letter. Very easy to go onto our website, and if you can't find a name to address that letter to, you can at least find a phone number and call the office and say, hey, I'm applying for an accounting position. I'd like to know the name of the controller. Or, I'd like to know who in HR I might be interviewing with. Can I get that name? If you're going to go through the exercise of writing a cover letter, which I would encourage you to do, I would have one that goes with your resume. I don't know that I would submit it to every job that you apply to. You have to feel it out when you look at the application. But make sure that you have the correct spelling of a name.
The importance of applying for a particular job and what you're essentially trying to do is to say, here's why I qualify for this job. And you're actually alleviating the pressure from the recruiter of having to go, here's why they qualify. Because your cover letter has done that analysis. It said, here's what they want, here's what I have, and here's why I fit. So I think that's kind of the level of analysis that you want to put forward when you're applying.
Absolutely.
The cover letter, what you certainly don't want to do is just repeat what you're putting already on your resume. You would probably just want to focus more around what it is about the specific job that interests you and the company. And maybe if there's a way to connect sort of your personal interests with the culture of the organization. At Decker's Outdoor in particular, we really focus on our hiring. Is this person going to be a cultural fit with our organization? This person might be the best technical person in Santa Barbara County and beyond, but if they don't culturally fit with our organization, then we're not going to hire them. And that's a place where you can really expand on that.
Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by culture? The culture of the organization, like how people work. Like if you're somebody who really loves to get dressed up for work and put on a suit and tie and be really formal, you're probably not going to like working at Decker's. You're probably not going to fit in.
Yeah. This is what I wore to work today, and this is dressed up. I dressed up for you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate it. No, but I think that's part of the culture too, is this a place where you're going to fit in, where you're going to feel like, hey, these are my people. These are, people I can relate to. No, we're not talking about culture like, are you Jewish, are you Latina, or stuff like that.
Of course.
I just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah.
So here's a few no's. Don't not do the cover letter and the resume. It looks lazy. It just looks like you're not giving your all, best foot forward. If you do those, do not tailor it to the job and to the college. Read the job description, know what you're addressing, know what experience you have, and identify it on your application. That's the first thing the hiring supervisor is going through this application, and if he doesn't see highlights about the job, trash, oh, this one does, trash. So really tailor it. A big no-no is a resume and a cover letter coming from a different college or a different job. We see it all the time. We know they have not updated their resume and cover letter. It's addressed to someone else, to a different school. You've got to update it, and then to the job and to the college.
If you continue to take that extra effort throughout the next few weeks, next few months of your job search, you'll end up in a good spot. I guarantee it, because you're going to stand out. Right? It's people like you that stand out just by being here. You know, and instead of sending a resume to a company just blind, actually stopping by the company, saying, "Hey, I saw that you had a posting online. I just wanted to see if maybe I could talk to someone here, do a quick interview, have a quick tour, learn more about your company." Just showing your face, showing up in person, you know, you're going to stand out from the thousands of resumes that were emailed to the decision maker.